When you think of classic cars in movies, which is the one that comes out on top? No, not the car in Driving Miss Daisy. The Aston Martin DB5, the Bond car. Let's be honest, some people's behaviour at the traffic lights have got us all dreaming of machine gun headlamps, and this is where it all came from. Where do we start with this absolute icon of the silver screen? Well, let's start with the obvious, its looks. The thing is beautiful. Absolutely perfect for the world's most well-dressed alcoholic spy. You couldn't have picked a better fit for 007. It's simply gorgeous. Its silver curves have been the envy of men all over the world since the 60s. Its design is courtesy of Italian automotive body makers Carrozzeria Touring Superleggera, famed for the beauty of their vehicles. Their craftsmanship has ensured that this car, more than any other, has cemented itself as the quintessential Bond vehicle. It makes me wonder what my quintessential vehicle might be. Probably my prize stallion, but I only take him out for a ride on Sundays. The car makes its original appearances in both Goldfinger and Thunderball, with further reprisals in the modern Bond movies. But it's Goldfinger where it makes its starring role. In the original Ian Fleming book, Bond was meant to drive a DB Mark III, but the producers wanted to have the latest Aston available. This happened to be the DB5 prototype, which Aston Martin was initially very reluctant to use. With the famous link between the car company and the franchise, this seems amazing in hindsight. Anyway, product placement rights and a whole load of money later, they somehow managed to change their mind. I would say that you couldn't get me to change my mind using money, but that would be a lie, so I won't. The car you see in the film, for the most part, is actually the original DB5 prototype. 2 more less refined vehicles were used for stunts, and 2 additional cars were also used for publicity tours to promote the film. That's 5 Astons in total, which is almost as many as I have in my garage. If you're a fan of the DB5, show it some love by pressing the like button. And also stay glued to your ejector seats because we'll be reviewing the Aston's gadgets and their origin stories in the next section. Under the hood, the DB5 had a brand new engine in comparison to its predecessors. The engine size increased from 3.7 litres on the DB4 to 4 litres on this model. It produced 282 brake horsepower. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot by today's standards, but at the time was more than enough to have Bond chase after villains or ridiculously named girls alike. Pussy galore, anyone?
Who are you?
My name is Pussy Galore.
I must be dreaming.
The car had a top speed of 145 miles per hour. Again, this doesn't sound too fast in the 21st century, but in 1964 was more than enough power to turn any head, even ones that Oddjob had decapitated with his hat. What really set this car apart, of course, in the movie was its impressive use of gadgets. Again, this differs somewhat from what was written in the book, in which the car was only equipped with a smokescreen, but where's the fun in that? Like little boys coming up to Christmas, the director of the movie, Guy Hamilton, and his crew couldn't resist adding more gifts onto the car as production went on. This is similar to YouTube, which has added all sorts of fancy gadgets to this page. For example, the like button. Personally, I have no idea what it does, but you could give it a go and see. Back to Goldfinger, and the director himself came up with the revolving number plate after getting lots of parking tickets. An amazing fact that must have got Mr. Hamilton thinking about modifications to his own car, and which has already got me tinkering with my number plate. His stepson also saw an ejector seat in a car on television and thought that would be a fun add-on for the Aston. If you had the opportunity to add a gadget to the car, what would you choose? Let me know by carrier pigeon or in the comments section if that's too much effort. There are also more practical reasons why changes needed to be made to the vehicle. The most worrying of which was the oil dispenser, which was actually an alternative to the original spike dropping gadget. They did this because they feared that viewers might actually start dropping sharp objects from their own cars, which seems ridiculous, but who hasn't thought about doing something like that to a truck driver filling up their rearview mirror? I haven't, obviously, because they can't catch me, but I'm sure some of you out there have. And amazingly, almost all the gadgets were actually installed as working models in the car. We'll get onto the ones that didn't soon, and also find out how they all went missing. The gadgets took 6 weeks to install onto the prototype by the production team, and as far as I'm concerned, that's time well spent. What else are you going to do in 6 weeks? Personally, I would cut the grass on my estate, but to be honest, that's not nearly enough time. Most of the gadgets were installed on the vehicle, but a couple weren't for obvious reasons. They'd most likely fail Bond's MOT. The wheel-destroying blades that come out of the car were done in studio. These were inspired by the chariot scenes in Ben-Hur, and I've since been inspired to include them on my chariots when patrolling my grounds. Sorry to disappoint, but the ejector seat was also not installed for real in the car. You'll have to suspend your disbelief for this one, much like I do when James Bond drives a blue BMW in GoldenEye. Disgraceful. But what happened to the car after the movie? It's worth mentioning that the Aston gets a pounding in Thunderball before the company amazingly decided to restore it back to perfect condition and sell it as a used car. I mean, that's like taking Frankenstein's monster and putting it to work at the local supermarket. Thankfully, the buyer, Bond superfan Gavin Kazar, decided to add the gadgets back into the car by popular demand. Utah jeweler Richard Lucy then picked up these unique wheels and held onto them for 15 years, during which time I'm sure he had his fair share of pretending to be 007 while stuck at red lights. He must have got bored playing Monty Norman's theme while pulling into forecourts because he decided to sell the original Bond car in 1986. Anthony V. Pugliese III, finally a name I can relate to, picked it up for a steal at $250,000. At this point, the car had been doing the rounds at car shows and Bond meets around the globe. It found its way into the Black Hawk Auto Museum in California before being stolen in 1997. I swear it wasn't me who did it, although I would say that, wouldn't I? Regardless, the insurance company paid out a reported $4.2 million to Pugliese and offered $100,000 as a reward for the car, dead or alive. Do these kind of figures wet your whistle? Would you like to see more videos on expensive cars and movies? Well, make your own then. I'm joshing, of course. We'll make one if you want us to. Comment below which cars and movies you'd like me to ruin for you next, and I'll get my minions writing. After 25 years, the car, missing, presumed dead, amazingly resurfaced like Daniel Craig coming out of the sea in his short shorts. It was reportedly found in the Middle East by a group called Art Recovery. I must call them up at some point and see if they can find that Picasso I was using as a makeshift table, and, misplaced. But despite that sighting, the trail seems to have gone cold once again, and there have been no further reports since early 2022. Hopefully the original Bond car, now expected to be worth a huge £18 million, can be recovered. I'd like to have a shot at buying it. You never know when a bulletproof shield might come in handy in the countryside. So this is the Bond car, the one we all think of when it comes to everyone's famous promiscuous spy. It's a perfect blend of power, gorgeous design, and unforgettable gadgets that you want from a 007 vehicle. And the original car has had quite a life. Like Bond himself, it's been all over the world and delighted audiences for decades. Let's hope, like Bond, he'll come back from the dead and be able to thrill crowds once more. I wonder if that reward has increased. I'm not doing anything for the next 2 to 3 years or so. It's no wonder with a legend like this that the car has been ever-present in the James Bond franchise. After a hiatus, it made a return in the 90s with a significant role in GoldenEye, before cameos in Tomorrow Never Dies, and very, very briefly in The World Is Not Enough. Now, I'm not saying Die Another Day was terrible because it didn't feature the DB5, but it didn't help. In a return to form, Daniel Craig famously had the DB5 in storage, ready for action in Skyfall. After its destruction, it was then helpfully restored by the new Q to feature Inspector and No Time to Die. And clearly this car isn't ready to die quite yet, even if the original appears to be ghosting its way around the globe. For a closer look at the most iconic cars in Hollywood and to keep the log fire burning in my manor house, please subscribe to the channel. Until next time, stay dashing, and if you can't be dashing, classy you will do.